You science that you are currently teaching or have previously taught. So you have four options. Okay, based on the result, we have yes. Our participants are teaching mostly. Yes, our participants are teaching mostly physics, earth and space science. Okay, both 33%. Biology, teaching biology 17%, and those who are teaching chemistry comprises 17%. So, Sir Robert, our participants are mostly junior high school teachers, and then junior high school teachers who are teaching physics and earth and space science.
Thank you, Professor Caparoso.
Okay. Our time now is 9:57. So we have 3 more minutes before we will start the webinar because it's scheduled at 10 a.m. So at the moment, let's wait for the other participants to join us because the pre-registration data says that we should be having at least 250 participants for this morning's webinar. Okay, I think we are ready to go. Thank you for joining us today in this webinar on promoting STEM among girls. This webinar is made possible by Mindanao State University Ligan Institute of Technology, Office of the Vice Chancellor for Research and Extension, through its Gender and Development Resource Center and the College of Education. It is also co-presented by the Department of Education Regional Office 10. I am Jun Caparoso and I will be your moderator for this webinar. Also in the meeting are the Vice Chancellor for Research and Extension of MSU-IIT, Dr. Jinky B. Bornales, and Dr. Amelia T. Buwan, the Dean of the College of Education. Before we proceed with the content, allow me first to cover a few housekeeping topics or reminders which are now projected or which are now shown in your screen. First, the webinar is scheduled for 1 hour and 30 minutes. Second, please note that this webinar will be recorded and we will later share the link to you so you may listen to the recording or share it with colleagues later. A live broadcast is also shown in Facebook for those who cannot join us in the meeting room. Please contribute by asking questions or interacting with other participants. You may be given time to speak during the open forum, which will be done after the speaker's presentation. If you have a question for the speaker at any time or any point in the middle of his talk, just type it in Slido. Just like the one that we did earlier. Slido is an interactive Q&A and polling platform where you can directly write your comments or questions to our speaker. If you feel that your question is already posted or asked by another participant, you need not type it as a new question. Instead, you can simply like the question already posted. If you like the question posed by your co-participant, please click the thumbs up button shown beside the question. Most liked question will automatically move up to the list of top questions and will most likely be given priority during the Q&A. To go to Slido, you just go to sli.do and then you need to sli.do and then you enter the code U018 and then once you've signed in, you click the Q&A tab to write your question. Instructions on how to claim your certificates of participation will be announced at the end of the session. Also, you are advised to mute your microphones while the talk is ongoing so you will not be distracted by any unnecessary noise in the background. There are 3 buttons at the bottom of your video or image, like the one shown on screen. Leftmost is your microphone. It is muted at the moment, as you can see in the icon. So please do not leave it while the meeting is your microphone ongoing or if the speaker is still presenting. Once again, it is muted at the moment, as you can see in the icon. I will tell you later in the session that your mic be open forum if you are only allowed if the speaker is still presenting. I hope everything is clear once again and that everybody is listening at the moment. As you can see in the icon. I will tell you later in the session that so we will begin with a short introduction or only allowed if the speaker is still presenting. I hope everything is clear once again. Like any accomplished productive academics, as you can see in the icon. Our speaker is also the lead, so we will begin with a short introduction or only mention only if the highlighter is still presenting. I hope everything is especially those that really accomplished productive or academics, as you can see in the icon. Our speaker is also the lead, so if you want to read more about him, mention you may visit his site in the link that is shown in your presentation. I hope everything is especially those that really accomplished productive or academics, as you can see. That's the link on his Google site. Our speaker is also the lead, so this presenter is a graduate MSc from the University of Illinois, especially those he received his MSc PhD in physics. That's the London University of Washington postdoctoral fellow. This presenter is for conducting quantum computing at the University of Maryland College Park. He has published in several received his PhD that's the London University for conductivity quantum information and the physics for conducting quantum computing. He was the program director of International Science Foundation scholarship at Bristol University of Indiana University for conductivity, where he was lecturer in the research chair of physics and quantum computing. And he was the program director receiving lecture for Science Foundation. He received Bristol University scholars workers in Indiana University and was research mentor to multiple water scholars. In 2008, he received the Outstanding Chapter Advisory Board from the American He received Bristol University scholars workers. He is currently an associate professor of research and founding director of the Center for Undergraduate Research at the University of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, USA. Most importantly, our speaker is an advocate for women in STEM director and founded the Center for Physics Wonder Girls at the University of Philadelphia. These credentials is inarguable. Most importantly, most fit our social life advocate for women in STEM promoting STEM and founded the Center for Physics Wonder Girls at the University of Philadelphia. Distinguished women credentials is inarguable. Most Roberto Most Brown. Our social life advocate for women in
Thank you, Professor Caparroso. Let's make sure the slide is All right, thank you. Thank you, Caparroso. Good morning to everyone. Greetings from the city of Philadelphia, where I make sure my name is Professor Caparroso mentioned. It's Roberto Ramos. I am Director of Physics Wonder Girls program. All right. Currently based in thank you, Science. Good morning to everyone in Philadelphia. I would like to make sure thank Vice Chancellor mentioned Ramos and Physics Wonder Girls for this opportunity to share with you some insights into how to promote in Philadelphia. I would like to make sure thank so Vice Chancellor. Let me begin by some motivation. Physics Wonder Girls for this opportunity. I am right now mostly used some insights from STEM culture. I started teaching physics I would like to make about 22. And basically I've been doing all that all my life. And I actually got into promoting STEM to girls because I have started teenage physics. I was interested in science and I wanted to figure out how to cultivate that interest through the years. And so through about 7 years now, I have been promoting STEM physics summer camps. I have started girls. since 2013. And with that, I want to share some of my experiences with the years as an advocate. So about 7 years in STEM. By the way, I will see the chat since the questions right now. So Professor Cabal, some of my experiences interject whenever you want to read some of the questions that may pop up in STEM. Feel free to by the way, I will see I will stop talking and I will questions right now. Try to answer those questions. So there's a picture of my daughter when she was still in middle school. Some of the questions that may pop up. So here is an outline of today's talk. If you will allow me, I will first talk about a couple of gender issues. Try to answer these questions. So there's a picture of my daughter in States still and discuss then background some of the questions. So here is a gender imbalance in science and technology. If you will allow me, then I will discuss what research tells us about the solutions that some of these problems in the United States. We discuss questions like how girls learn, and based on that, what can we do as educators and administrators in order to promote, discuss, and then sustain the interest about the solutions that some of these problems. And finally, I will discuss an example question on intervention. In this example, physics girls can as educators we're talking about in order to and in this example, I would like to show to you how we integrate some of these solutions into this package on intervention. So let me begin by discussing some statistics from the Commission of Higher Education. And in this example, I would like so here on this slide, some of these solutions are the higher education enrollment intervention program. So let me begin by discussing. And so if you look at the Commission bachelor's degree, and on the left side, so here number of women who are enrolled are the higher education in the year 2016-2017. That's about 1 million to 1.7 million. The Commission on the right, and on the left, the number of male number of women who are enrolled are clearly in the year there are more women than men at the bachelor's 1 degree level. Even in the post-baccalaureate level, and even in the master's and in a doctorate, there are more women. And when you total all of these together, you will find out that 55.5% are women and 44.5% are men. This tells us that there are more women students in the Philippines higher education levels. Now, in contrast to that graph, here I have a slide that compares male versus female by discipline, enrollment by discipline. And so I draw your attention in the highlighted, yellow highlighted figures, where it says that of students enrolled in engineering and technology courses in 2016 to 17, only 29.3% were females versus 70.7% who were males. Furthermore, there were fewer female students, about 40.6% in information technology related courses than males, which are 59.4%. This is despite the fact that there are more women than men in higher education. So we can clearly see that there is a gender imbalance in STEM. And this gender imbalance is not just seen in the Philippines, it's seen in many countries across different continents. And in particular, in the United States, in 2017, only 29% of the STEM labor force in the USA are women. In physics, that figure is even less. It's just 20%. So what does it mean? There are very, very few physics graduates who are women. Not, in fact, 1 in every 5 physics students are women. Excluding life sciences, the data tells us that the fields of chemistry, engineering, informatics, mathematics, and physics have the least women representation. In this graph, I show you the STEM bachelor's degree earned by women in the US between 1965 and 2015, broken down into several disciplines. I draw your attention to the year 1965, where across the board, many enrollment by women in STEM disciplines fared very low compared to men. However, over the years, this has improved. And you can see that in 2015, while women earned 60% of bachelor's degrees in the US, only 20% of physics and engineering degrees were earned, were earned by women. Contrast that, for example, to biology or chemistry, where women, there were a lot of women. So clearly, the gender imbalance is not too problematic as far as statistics is concerned for biology and chemistry. However, it is clear, there is a clear imbalance in the fields of mathematics, earth sciences, physics, and engineering. Again, I draw your attention to this figure here, where physics and engineering in these disciplines, only 20% are women. There is clearly a gender imbalance. So then you might ask yourself the question, why are less girls going into STEM, particularly the physical sciences and engineering? I remember when I was studying at UP Diliman many years ago, my first course was in electrical engineering, and there was just a handful of women in the EE program. There were, I think, maybe 2 or 3, and there was a whole bunch of us. Clearly, there was a gender imbalance even at that time, and even today it persists. Now, is it a question of ability? The research tells us that no, it is not. There is no question of ability here. In fact, girls excel in problem solving when the nature of the problem solving is collaborative. That's very important, and we'll get back to that in a future slide. In 2017, after testing 125,000 kids across 52 countries, this organization, an international organization called the OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, had a program, had an exam called the Program for International Student Assessment, or PISA. And the program found that girls are actually better than boys at collaborative problem solving. And some people will say that this can probably be correlated with the high potential of girls for communication and for languages. And this is, of course, one of the common stereotypes. And there is some credence to this, as research shows. So when does this lack of interest in STEM begin? In the US, as of the 4th grade, literature shows us that 68% of boys and 66% of girls like science, indicating very little gender differences. And this is at the 4th grade level, in the primary level of instruction. In addition, there was a Miami University study that showed how 2,000 girls in grades 4 to 8 found that they liked science and math less in the 8th grade than they did in the 4th grade. So what does this tell us? It tells us that in the beginning, girls and boys are very much the same as far as interest in science was concerned. But then when they transition into the middle school age, something happens. And what exactly happens is not clear. That's what research tells us. But something does happen that reduces the interest of girls in STEM. And then the boys' interest in STEM just continues on. The problem, as research shows, is that it is around the middle school years when this interest in math and sciences among girls begin to wane. And so that tells us that we must do some kind of intervention at that level or even slightly earlier. But what factors do contribute to this loss of interest in STEM? And there are many factors. This is a very complicated problem, that could be attacked from different angles. But clearly, there is a pervasive cultural stereotype stereotyping that is at work. For example, many cultures across many countries would say that physics and engineering are inaccessible to girls because they are of a masculine type nature of study. Boys supposedly excel in math and the hard sciences, and girls are very good in languages and humanities, and in the soft sciences such as psychology and sociology. These are all stereotype, anecdotal, and many of them are not really founded. There is also a systemic bias against women. For example, at the college level, even among faculty who teach, there is generally an inadequate work-life balance policy for women. In addition, there are also a lack of resources for women faculty who have these work-life balance concerns, because of course they would like to raise a family, and how to balance that is not an easy thing to do. And so there has to be support for that.
Sir Robert,
Go ahead.
can you present your presentation again? Can you reshare your presentation so we can see it in live stream?
Oh, it
Yes, sir.
failed. Okay, let me try to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Where is it? Um, Trying to find the slide. Share. Apologies for technical difficulties here. I didn't have a problem earlier, but for some reason there is. Yeah. Yeah, for some reason I'm unable to find the window that that has the PowerPoint. Okay, maybe.
So,
Are you seeing this slide?
not yet, sir.
Not yet?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I think it's visible to other participants.
Can you see the slide? When does the lack of interest begin? Yes, no? June, can you see this?
We haven't seen the slides, sir.
You don't see any slide?
Yes, sir. Just your video.
Just my video, okay. We don't want that. All right, let's see. Present now. Window. Okay, hold on. Let me, all right, all right. Let me try again. Is this viewable or no? Can you see this or no? Yes? No?
We haven't seen it, sir.
Ah?
Sorry. Can you see the present now button in your Google Meet?
Yeah.
Lower portion of your logo. Lower right portion of Google Meet.
Yeah, I
Yes.
see the present now. Should I click a window or
A window.
a window? Yeah.
Yes. You try a window.
Okay. Okay, so I tried the window, but for whatever reason, I cannot see my PowerPoint slide in the window. That's why. Oh, okay, maybe this one. Okay, maybe that one. Now can you see something?
Yes, sir. We've seen it.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Sorry. Apologies to everyone. I'm used to, this is my first, what is this, Google Meets presentation. Where was I? So, remember, so at what point did the slide cut off? Did you guys see this slide? All right. So anyway, so So the question we had last time was, when does the lack of interest in STEM begin, right? And what research shows is that in the US, in the primary or the elementary years, boys and girls like science equally. And then right around the time they go into middle school, that's the time that there was this discrepancy, that the girls began with interest in science and the boys still continued with their interest. And so the problem is there is something that happens during the middle school years. And the question is, how do you address this problem with sufficient interventions? But before you can address, you have to figure out what the factors are that contributes to this loss of interest. Some of these factors, as we mentioned, was the cultural stereotyping that boys excel in math and the hard sciences, while girls are supposedly good in languages, humanities, and the soft sciences. All of these are, again, unfounded and based on pure prejudice and stereotyping. And there is also that systemic bias we mentioned against women, that in many institutions there are not enough resources to provide for work-life balancing by women. And so what is that there is a systemic education problem, that the underrepresentation of women in STEM is a symptom, it's a manifestation of a very systemic education problem, and therefore corrective measures must come into place, and this has to occur at different levels, beginning from the primary level, elementary, through middle school, high school, college, and even beyond. And science educators throughout these different levels must be able to maintain that early excitement that our grade school kids, boys and girls, have, that interest and curiosity that our children, regardless of gender, bring with them when they enter school. We must be able, as educators, to preserve that and not allow girls to lose their interest in science. So to aid us in figuring out interventions, we go to what research tells us. And research tells us, particularly for girls, that the achievements and interest in STEM of girls are strongly shaped by their environment, more than boys. So what this tells us is that it demonstrates the effect that societal beliefs and the learning environment of our girls have a very important effect on their motivation, on their interest, and eventually on their achievements. What this is saying is that when teachers and parents tell the girls that their intelligence can expand with experience and learnings, we find out that girls do better on math tests and are more likely to say that they want to continue studying math in the future. In other words, girls need that reinforcement, that positive reinforcement from the environment for girls to advance in their learning in STEM. And if we do not provide that as educators, then we will lose them. So girls' achievements and interest in STEM are closely shaped by their environments. And what research again tells us is that girls, actually, a lot of girls assess their math abilities, and this is very interesting. Girls assess their math abilities lower than boys with similar math achievements. In other words, girls hold themselves to a higher standard than boys. And so if we don't provide that reinforcement, then girls are more easily, because they hold their standards very high, they can easily lose that interest if they are not encouraged. So by emphasizing that girls and boys achieve equally well in math and science, parents and teachers can therefore encourage the girls to assess their skills more accurately. It is clear from research that bias, and often this is unconsciously done, bias limits girls' progress in the STEM field. Sure, a lot of people incorrectly associate STEM fields with male and humanities and arts fields with female. Oh, no slide again? Hello?
Yes, sir. I think the participants no longer see your slides.
Oh, so we're losing slides. So let's
Yes, sir.
let me try again. Window. Okay, where is that thing? Okay, are you seeing this? No? Okay.
We haven't seen the slides yet, sir. Okay, I
About
think it's
now?
it's
Now?
loading. Yes, I'm seeing it now.
Okay, you see it, right?
Yes, yes. Thank you.
All right. Okay, thank you. So maybe what I can do is later, I can provide the slides as a PDF, and then also you have the recording. So some of these hiccups can be solved after the actual webinar. So anyway, going back to this bias that is often unconscious, research has demonstrated, therefore, the importance of culture, learning, and the working environment of girls in cultivating their interest in STEM. And so we have to cultivate that, that environment where the girls are working. So what does this tell us? The summary of all of these is that we need to provide, if we are interested in advancing girls' interest in science and math and engineering, we need to provide a safe, nurturing environment for learning for the girls. In other words, picture a classroom where the girls feel safe, where the girls feel that they're going to learn something today, something important. We need to provide that. We need to provide an atmosphere which is non-threatening, an atmosphere where the girls know that they will flourish and that they will not have problems with boys showing that they're more superior supposedly in the field. We need to give that safe, nurturing environment. And another way of doing this also is by providing a broad overview of the field, whether it is math or physics or engineering, an overview of fields showing to the girls how important in the broad picture that field is. In other words, you have to introduce the discipline, the lesson, its application to general society, because girls really thrive on that. And the other most interesting intervention is to have the classroom environment to be more interactive, more collaborative, because research shows us that girls thrive in such an environment more so than boys. And so if you don't have an environment that is interactive, with girls talking to each other, working, doing hands-on stuff, the girls are less likely to prosper, less likely to believe that what they're doing is good for them, but what they're doing is not resulting in any kind of learning. There is no affirmation of learning compared to an environment that is interactive and highly collaborative. So this is something that is very important to remember. So what can we do as STEM teachers? To summarize all of that, number one, we have to maintain the excitement, the interest, the curiosity that these kids bring with them when they begin school. We have to listen to the kids and positively give them positive reinforcement, to give them encouraging words, praises, if you will, right? I remember when I was teaching in the beginning, I didn't care so much for praising people. I just wanted to evaluate them from tests, from their answers on exams. And what I've learned through the years is that, especially for girls, if you give them praises, if you give them, use positive adjectives on them, their desire, their thirst for learning simply, explodes. And so it's very important to encourage girls. We must encourage and inspire the girls with positive words and positive guidance. We have to interact as well with scientists to explore, the use of inquiry-based and hands-on strategies of learning. Remember what I said earlier? The nature of collaborative and interactive learning is very crucial to the education of girls, for girls not to lose their interest in science. And so we have to work with scientists, both social scientists and physical scientists, to figure out the use of inquiry-based hands-on strategies. We need to improve ourselves through professional development. We need to read literature on how to encourage girls to learn. We have to be ready to experiment with new ideas and new techniques of learning. And then finally, we need to point the girls to STEM role models, because they don't have many in science and technology. In fact, society recognizes very few women STEM scientist role models. In fact, if this were an interactive conversation, I would ask you, give me one woman STEM scientist who you would prescribe as a role model for your students, for your girls' students. Who would be this STEM scientist? And often, this is the woman model that comes into mind, Marie Curie, with her black and white picture. She's a physicist, chemist who discovered radium and polonium. She won 2 Nobel Prizes, one in physics and one chemistry. And that's Marie Curie is the #1 name that people will give, teachers would give across disciplines and across nations. But the problem is that's basically it, right? There are no other readily available, readily recognizable role models in STEM. Girls actually know very few women scientist role models. And it's understandable. Of the 357 people awarded a Nobel in science, a Nobel Prize in science, only 16 were women. So right then and there, it's lopsided. There is an imbalance. Why were only 16 awardees women? In 2018, the Nobel Prize in Physics had been awarded, as of 2018, has been awarded to 209 individuals. And of these 209 individuals, only 3 were women. One of them, of course, is Marie Curie, and the other 2 are shown here. Maria Geppert-Mayer, who won the Nobel Prize in 1963, and Donna Strickland, who's still alive, who was awarded the Nobel Prize in 2018 for her techniques of optical tweezing using lasers. But most of the physics Nobel Prize winners are obviously men. So you only have these 3 women as models, right? Girls need more models. That is important. There is a strong correlation between STEM interest in STEM and gender stereotypes. In fact, research shows us that gender stereotypes of STEM professionals in the media, and I say in the media, in film and in TV, influence students' stereotype perceptions of STEM. In other words, what the students see on TV, in media, in the movies, influences their interest in science and technology, engineering, and math. An example, when asked to draw or describe STEM professionals, adolescents most often depict STEM professionals as male, as well as white, middle-aged or elderly, unattractive, dressed in a lab coat, in a white lab coat, wearing glasses, looking geeky or nerdy, socially awkward, and individuals who work alone. And so, if you were to draw that, it's very easy to expect a picture like this. Now, if you were a student, would you look like this guy? You know, especially if you're a girl. If you're a girl, would you want to be this guy? Probably not. And so a lot of girls don't become scientists. Scientists are often portrayed in films, and many of them are men. And even with that, you have here in this picture, the scientists are usually either a mad scientist or absent-minded professor or a brilliant genius or a maniacal villain to socially awkward loners. And so with that said, if you were a guy, would you be or desire to be one of these? And if you were a girl, well, there are no models here, right? The exception, of course, is the Big Bang Theory, which did show greater diversity of scientists in regards to gender, ethnicity, STEM, and STEM specialty. In Europe, experts actually believe that the show led to increasing the number of university physics majors by 10%. But within the show itself, the scientific work of female scientists were not really given much attention. Because 2 of these girls, one is a neuroscientist in the show and the other is a microbiologist. But it's also all the guys who are getting the glory, so to speak. Girls and women need role models in STEM. That is clear from research. And so it's only been recent that you have seen women scientists portrayed in media. Of particular interest are the hidden figures, the women at NASA, especially the African-American women in NASA. When you look at all these women, these images, they're very powerful, and they scream, they reinforce these positive adjectives that inspire girls in STEM. Instead, phenomenal, brilliant, one of a kind, genius. And these are adjectives that need to be heard by the girls we teach. Be ready to give those adjectives to them. And in life, of course, there are plenty more models, more than in TV. Here are a bunch of them. And the top 4 are those who are based in the US. Debbie Jean is at the was a famous scientist at NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Stanley Ryan was the astronaut. Donna Strickland was a Nobel laureate. And Jocelyn Bell Burnell was the co-discoverer of the pulsar. And in our native Philippines, you have a sprinkling of very, very talented and many of them young scientists. And here I put them, and I apologize if I do not include your favorite Filipino scientists. But the point is, our students, our girls, need to see these faces in order to be encouraged. Exposure to media, images of successful women STEM professionals certainly affect interest in STEM because they influence self-identification of girls with STEM careers. And they're especially salient for girls at the adolescent stage, which is an active time of identity formation. They're forming their identities, their preconceived notions of what they will become later in life, hopefully as a scientist. Such identities is malleable. In other words, it can still be shaped. And the way it's shaped will depend on the environment, on the individuals and the role models that these students will encounter. And so it's very important to show them, to let them, allow themselves to imagine that they can be one of these real people, real women scientists in the coming years. And so one idea is, as you teach in the classroom, try not to just, isolate the topic, the concept, the technique by theoretical discussion. Extend the discussion to the real world by invoking real world examples. Talk about these people. Ask a student to talk about research about them and tell the class what their accomplishments were and what their struggles were. And if you had the ability to invite them, maybe via Zoom or by Google Meets, invite them to give a talk to your class or to your school, because that, I guarantee you, will change lives, will transform lives. It will cause girls to pause and consider the potential role as future scientists after modeling themselves after these scientists. So I want to talk about, as promised, an example of an intervention where we try to piece together all of these different methods of trying to solve these barriers of the gender imbalance. And the way we have at least tried to do this is by doing a physics camp for girls, and now for 7 years. So I kind of got inspired by my daughter to do a physics camp for girls. And it's important, it started in the middle school girls, because that's when the interest in science begins to wane. And so I invite you to look at that website there, take a picture of it, and there's more information there, and some of that I will discuss today in the remaining time. So this Physics Wonder Girls Camp that I started in 2013. It is a free 4-day summer physics camp for girls, mostly rising 8th and 9th graders. It started as the broader impact or outreach component of an NSF research grant for material science, but it kind of took its own life. It took off and got funding even from organizations like the Lindback Foundation, the International Society for Optics and Photonics, Constellation. Okay. Are you guys seeing this? Or did the slide disappear again? I just want to make sure before I go on.
Mr. Robert.
June, Are you seeing this or no?
The slides are not seen because somebody attempted to present. Please share it again.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. All right. So, okay. So the idea here, the motivation here is to enhance interest in STEM and in particular physics among middle school girls. And you can see the number of girls that have been impacted through the 7 or so years. It's not a whole lot, but a lot of these girls are actually the high high performing girls in STEM, and the objective was to keep that interest of the girls who are already interested in science. So the recommendations from the US Department of Education, which we will adopt, are the following. To address all these issues of imbalance in gender imbalance. A, strengthen the girls' beliefs regarding the STEM abilities via positive feedback. This is the reinforcement that we were talking about earlier. B, connect STEM activities to careers in ways that avoid gender stereotypes. In other words, make a connection between the content, the STEM content, and careers. You know, if you're talking about gravity, then let's talk about being an astronaut or being ability to send a satellite to outer space, which the Philippines has been able to do, these micro satellites. C, choose activities that spark curiosity about STEM. Activities that are not just, you know, recipe, standard labs, but experiences that are new and novel. And we'll look at some examples of that. And finally, provide mentorship by women role models, in this case, through summer camps for girls. In other words, invite STEM scientists to talk to the girls and to tell them what their life is all about, what their challenges were, to inspire them. In fact, UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, prescribes several of these recommendations on their website. And you can see that one of them is a STEM camps, one of them is role models and mentoring, career guidance, even contests and competitions, and also after-school projects and clubs. So whatever will get the girls interacting, collaborating with each other, and doing new things that will make a connection to STEM more meaningful to them, these are recommended. And there is a website there that you can get all these documents looking at different programs in different countries, not just the US or not just the Philippines, but in continents like Africa, Europe. You will see all of these compilations of different programs, which is very inspiring. So anyway, so this Physics Wonder Girls Camp, what we do is the first step is participant identification. What we do is we contact the middle school science teachers. We ask them to nominate girls, good candidates who have interest in science and math. And then we select about 15 participants based on essays submitted, recommendation letters, and things like those. We don't want to just get anyone because we don't want to do babysitting. Why? Because there's limited number of people to help. It's basically just me, one faculty, and maybe 4 undergraduates, and that's basically it. And so we really want to make a connection with those students who are very interested in science, and we want to sustain that. And the first step is, again, securing that safe, welcoming, nurturing environment for the Physics Wonder Girls. And so you can see these pictures where we on purpose decorate the room with ribbons, with flowers, with adjectives that describe what the girls, positive adjectives for the girls. We put pictures of famous women who are STEM scientists around so that they have role models to at least see. And then we have group dynamics to break those barriers down and make them like the environment, like the company, know each other better. We try to convert, in this case, physics from being boring, being inaccessible, through a classroom makeover. We decorate the room, we put lights everywhere, we give them a real cool t-shirt, and we have this giant banner. And we want to change just girl talk. And they each get binders and a drawstring bag to put all these stuff together. Some pointing to ownership, basically, of material. And then we have them go through activities. And again, here is where that collaborative, interactive activities come in. We have hands-on inquiry-based experiments at maybe 4 to 5 workstations. And after 30 minutes, they rotate from one station to another. And then they keep on rotating through a period of time. And again, some of the activities involve project building. For example, the girls build a remote controlled submersible. Submersible just means underwater. So it's a kind of like underwater RC boat or submarine. Last year, we had the girls build solar cars, solar boats. So it's very important to get the girls to work in teams of 3 or 4, building things. And then their interest, you just cannot stop. You cannot just stop them. They keep on talking and talking. And then we give them new experiences, like acting on non-Newtonian fluids, basically cornstarch with water. And it's a non-Newtonian fluid, and they hop on it, and they try to hit it. And then the fluid becomes suddenly hard, right? So that just blows their mind away. We have them walking on eggs. We talk about walking on eggs and how the pressure versus force works to keep the eggs from cracking. We give them experiences like riding a hovercraft, a one-man hovercraft that was built in our department. And then we have physics-based games, research lab tours, and the ability to meet scientists. In other words, we invite scientists to come on and join and tell the girls about their experiences and their careers, their career trajectory, how they got to where they are right now, and have the girls have an intimate talk with them. And then we have a physics community show where the girls show their favorite demonstration. So again, we have pictures of different stations here. Notice the pretty environment, colorful, even looking like a fiesta environment. One experiment per workstation, and they rotate through. And there is an undergraduate who mans each station and stays there, specializing in that workstation. We have these hands-on inquiry-based experiments where the girls work with high voltage physics, wave physics, and notice that they're doing stuff, right? They're not just, oh, solve this problem, nothing like that. That included, yes, but getting the girls' hands wet and dirty is very important. And having them work in teams is even more important because they interact, they collaborate, and that is what causes the girls to talk and talk excitedly and then learn. Pressure demos, demos about superconductivity, non-Newtonian fluids where they step on the thing and they jog on the thing, and as a result they do not sink, despite the fact that it is a fluid. So these are really new, interesting things, and they're not difficult to do. It's just cornstarch, right? Here, we try to give the girls experiences that will give them lifelong skills, such as drilling, cutting, splicing wires, soldering, assembling stuff. And here they're assembling their remote-controlled submersibles, and they're learning to use pipe cutters, power tools. When they come home, the parents are, especially the fathers, they're totally blown away because the girls know stuff, the names of the tools that they use in their garages, in their basements. And so that causes the parents, especially the father, to have to reflect on the possibility that these girls will indeed make good scientists. So here are they are building and deploying and accessorizing. By the way, girls love to decorate, and they do decorate to death their submersibles before they deploy them into the water. They color them with ribbons and markers and all sorts of stuff. And then they do submersible competitions. Basically, they either race their submersibles or they make them do some missions. In other words, pick up rings that have been submerged underwater. The most rings you get, the more you become the winner, basically. And they're very excited. And why? Because they are collaborating, they're working in groups, and they're doing new things. These have sparked their curiosity. New experiences, right, are very important. New collaborative interactive experiences are very important. Here is the experience of walking on eggs. We speak of them, but how many of you have actually walked on eggs? And it would be great to have your girls walk on eggs and let them know the meaning of pressure and forces. And we provide STEM women role models. We put posters, pictures of women scientists all over the room with their TV and their background and all of that, so that the girls will remember that there is a future for them and that these are not just classroom exercises. And we also invite STEM women scientists, in this case physicists, to come into the classroom to talk about their trajectory, how their experience were when they were small, middle school girls or high school girls, experience in figuring out whether science was for them or not. Here is the chair of the Haverford College's physics department, the chair of, well, here is Miss USA 2017. If you recall, in 2017, Miss USA was an African-American lady, and she happened to be a nuclear chemist. And so I invited her, had the audacity to send her an email, and it was fortuitous that she just worked in New York and I was in Philadelphia, and it's just an hour and a half train ride. And she acceded and she came, and girls had a blast with her. So how many times will you have a beauty pageant queen who is a scientist? Not very, not very common experience. So uncommon experiences are very important. And that interaction between girls and women, in particular, maybe undergraduate physics majors, undergraduate STEM majors, that interaction is very important. In other words, these crew members, the crew members who directly interact with girls must be science students. The personal stories that they talk about, their how they balance work and life as mothers, as mothers of new infants, or mothers in families. How do they balance? Girls need to know that, and once they know that people have been successful with this, then the barrier towards becoming a scientist become less and less. So we had visitors from academia, professors, but we also had visitors. This is very important because there are a lot of scientists in private industry, even in the Philippines, who are many women scientists who are really wanting to contribute, to talk about their field, their craft, to middle school girls, to high school girls. You can invite them, you can reach out to them. I guarantee you, they will welcome the opportunity. And so here we had 3 food scientists, including a BS Physics graduate, who came to the classroom and to the lab and talked with the students, and they brought stuff with them, hands-on stuff, to interest the girls in food science, where physics and physical sciences are important. Of course, one of the favorites are the university research lab tours. Why? Because girls are interested in trying to think of what they will do in a couple of years. And if they see themselves as one of those students showing the lab, then they can picture themselves. And then physics or STEM career becomes more accessible in mind to them. And parents need to be involved as well. So here on day 2, I actually sent a letter to the parents that included tips in encouraging girls in STEM. So the encouragement of girls in STEM must not end in the classroom or in the laboratory. It must extend to the home. So you have that option of involving the parents and giving them material. Ask the parents to raise their expectations of the girls in math and science, to challenge them. Ask them never to say, math is hard, or I never did well in science, because these are actually damaging and discouraging to girls, as research has shown. You have to encourage the girls to solve puzzles at home, taking things apart, even if they cannot put them back together, because that's how we find out how things work. The parents need to be an advocate for the child in STEM. And finally, we have at the end of all of this is a capstone, a physics community show where the girls working in teams, again, it's very important, collaborative learning, interactiveness. Working in teams present their favorite demonstration to a community consisting of teachers, their families, their siblings, and this has a lot of collateral effect, because once their siblings or their cousins are watching, these could be girls, then again, you expand that potential, the idea of becoming a scientist to others, to younger siblings. And then the idea no longer becomes strange. The idea becomes real. And of course, there's graduation. So we actually give them certificates. And after the certificates, we do liquid nitrogen ice cream, where the girls actually do create liquid nitrogen ice cream and serve it to their parents. They have something to talk about at home. Now, communicating these type of programs is very important. So, because unless you get the word out, then other places will not learn about it and will not practice it and not spread the word about what to do. And so we try to do this. We actually had ABC News coming in CBS, and also Fox News come into campus and do interviews with the girls, and the girls enjoy that because they went home immediately, waiting to watch the interview on the news, and we we share our results through social media, share it to Facebook, share it to webinars like these, so that people know what could be done and what works and why things work. Even Miss USA's website, you can find our picture of the Physics Wonder Girls there. We've been invited actually to the Liberty Science Center, which is the largest, one of the largest science museums on the East Coast. So we went there. It actually became a family affair. That's me, my wife, who is a food scientist, my daughter, who is now actually a BS Physics student, and my son, who, seeing all of these, recognizes the importance of science. Here we are at the Women in Engineering Day at Liberty Science. This is our banner. It says Summer Physics Camp for Middle School Girls. And if you look carefully at this crowd, they're all girls. I didn't notice that it was all girls. I found myself actually the only guy in this group, and I didn't realize it until somebody told me. I guess it's important not to think about discrimination. When you have an idea and you want to push it, you just push it. And I encourage you to do the same in your respective circles. I can talk about how we assess our successes. What we often do is we have daily debriefings between me and my crew members, my 4 physics students who serve as crew members, mentoring the girls. We do blind surveys, and these are important because feedback is very important and encouraging. So here are some of the testimonies. So the girls wrote anonymously, "I didn't realize how much physics applied to other fields and professions." And to hear that from a middle school girl is very heartwarming and very encouraging. Being able to learn physics with other smart kids while making it fun was amazing. It is very important to note that many of girls interested in STEM are looking for others who are similarly interested in STEM. Why? Because they don't want to be shunned because of their nerdiness. They want to find other nerds who you can co-celebrate the joys of science. Right, and then this year we had the theme of renewable energies and sustainability. So you can put different themes. So we built solar boats and solar cars. Here are pictures of those. And they built solar. They worked with solar panels, built a wind turbine, basically a windmill, fuel cell cars. They like that. They enjoy it very much. And very important, visits to industrial laboratories outside the university to visit industrial scientists, especially women industrial scientists. Why is this important? So that the students, the girls, can imagine themselves being in those places, practicing these professions in about 5 to 10 years. And it's also, I guarantee you, a lot of these companies will be very interested to support girls. Interaction with female scientists are very important. Oh, by the way, this company called Puratos company is a Belgian multinational, but they have an R&D, research and development facility close to Philadelphia, and they've been very generous and very great at entertaining the girls and showing them the whole factory. We thank Puratos for that. And again, it's important to have interactions with female scientists, because if you just hear male scientists, then you lose half of the attention. Girls are looking for women scientists to talk to listen to hear their stories, and you have to work to find that out. And again, they have the physics showcase using their solar cars and solar boats and things like that, at least this year. So I want to end. I've gone a little bit over my time. I want to end with this slide, or this slide and the next slide, actually. What can we do as teachers? Again, I encourage you to maintain the excitement, the interest, and curiosity of the girls, which they bring into the classroom, into your classrooms. And knowing what we have learned today from research, I encourage you to produce collaborative activities to encourage the girls to interact, and not just to do the usual run-of-the-mill experiments. And in your discussions with the girls, make connections with the and evoking real female models, like the model scientists that we talked about today. Their lives, how they were challenged, and what did they do, so that the girls can perceive, they can model model themselves after these scientists. And for those of you who are administrators in the audience, and I know there are some of you here, here are some suggestions. Of course, as administrators, we must support our teachers, but we must support teachers, especially those experimenting with new strategies of learning. Strategies that involve interactive learning and collaborative learning that involve teams of girls. This is very important. It's important that we provide initiatives and practices to support a women-friendly working environment, to provide them support so that they can have this work balance scenario. Again, encourage interaction between scientists and teachers to allow them to explore the use of inquiry-based and hands-on strategies of learning. And number 4 is a little bit of a stretch, but consider a physics-first approach, where physics is a required first course rather than some elective capstone course. Why? Because after all, when girls learn about physics, they learn how things work. And once they have learned how things work, that sets the pace, sets the tone, and a Nobel Prize with Leon Lederman was a very strong proponent of this physics-first approach. And what he found out, that it resulted in more students and more women taking more science courses. So consider a physics-first approach. And lastly, I want to acknowledge the past funding agencies, the National Science Foundation, the Lindback Foundation, SPIE, Constellation, and Puratos Corporation for providing support for the camp. I have gone over my time, but I thank you for your patience. And if there are any questions, I'd appreciate hearing from them and answering them. Thank you.
Thank you for that insightful and very inspiring presentation, Dr. Ramos. We will now proceed with the open forum. We already have a question here, but if you have not submitted yet your question, please do it now. You can submit it via Slido as I instructed earlier. The instruction is also posted in the chat box of the meeting room. So please submit your question now. So maybe we can start with the first question, Dr. Ramos. Is it okay?
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Okay, first question. So what then is the adverse effect on science and technology? By the way, this is coming from Ramon Matuno. What then is the adverse effect on science and technology if men continues to dominate the STEM world?
I guess the question is, what would be wrong with the status quo?
Or what is the issue with the dominance of men in the STEM field?
When you have only one group dominating a field, then you become blind to the needs of others. So, for example, when you, if it's an industrial company and it's producing, it has a product, then if everyone in the conference room determining the decisions are men, then what makes you think that the product will be marketable to women? Because men may not be able to know how the population really feels about the product. You need the input of women, and so when you isolate women from contributing to a product, then you're going to lose. And think about this: NASA producing those, sending those satellites and spaceships, rockets to the moon. What made that possible? Many of those accomplishments were done by women. The calculations, the computations were done by women. And they were not done by men. And that tells you that women contribute a lot. In fact, women have been contributing a lot. It's just that they have not been elevated or appreciated by society. So I get the notion that that you can have a successful company or a successful enterprise without the contribution of women, because the contribution of women are already there, guaranteed. Right? They're just not being elevated. And so if you elevate them and you encourage more women to contribute in the same fashion, because after all, they hold their standards even higher than men, then you will have better results. I hope I answered your question.
Okay, thank you very much. We also have some reactions and comments from the participants. If I may read one from Juliet Pero. Massive promotion is necessary, including the emphasis on girls' capabilities to enroll in STEM. We have another one from Hannah Gonzaga. The activities that you have shown are so engaging, sir. We hope to apply them in our classrooms to increase our students' passion for science.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying
Yes,
that.
also from Jessa Marini Harris, the talk was very inspiring. We're still waiting for the participants to write their comments. Okay, I think we have another one here. The question is, if we are going to conduct activities in the classroom and give focus to the girls, is there a possibility that we would be accused of being gender biased?
No, no. About it, okay? One of the recommendations is to collaborative learning. In other words, you group uh, you group your students into small teams of 3 or 4, and doing some hands-on activity, project, or whatever it is. Does that automatically make it a girls-only thing? No, because boys also learn from it. In fact, if you go out to private industry or government or whatever it is, post employment, you will find out, or we have all found out, that people work in teams. Like, for example, when you arranged this webinar, there was a team. There was a team of 3 or 4 or maybe more people, right? You have an activity in school, no one is an island. No one is an island. Everyone works in teams. So collaborative learning is so essential, it should be required. And no one can accuse working in teams as being women only, right? So a lot of these ideas are actually helpful even to the guys. The guys often like to sit there, be quiet, and not talk. Well, that does not bode for good learning. The guys should learn to expand their horizons, and so that cannot be those kind of activities cannot be deemed girl only, because it applies to everyone. And when you invite women to speak about their their careers, you can also, of course, invite men. There's nothing wrong with that. The only issue is, over the last many decades, most of the people invited are usually men. So we should make it balanced. We're just providing equity here. We are not tipping the balance. The balance was already tipped. We are just writing the balance. I hope I answered your question.
Okay, I think that's okay. We don't anymore have questions from the Slido space. If anyone from the participant has a question, you can ask it directly to the speaker now. You can unmute yourself and then you ask it. But please, let's do it one by one, please.
It's very important to ask questions, because that's how we learn. I tell my students that.
Okay. There's one comment. You know, sir, in our school, for the last school year, we actually have more girls who enrolled in STEM than boys. And these girls excelled more than the boys did. So that's one observation from one of our participants. That's from Isadela Abonilia.
Fantastic. That's really
okay. I think it's a good yes. Anyone who would like to ask a question? Okay.
Maybe I should ask questions. If no one's asking me any questions, maybe I should ask some questions. Like, are there any initiatives, or maybe what are your major concerns about these type of initiatives in your respective schools? if you're not already doing it? What would keep you from doing these kind of change of learning strategies, like grouping students into small teams, uh, instead of just lecturing, right? Instead of just teaching direct, letting these small teams do projects that in the end will make the learning more meaningful to them, because they can say, oh, I did this. I was able to do this as part of a team.
Okay. Anyone who would like to react on that or to respond to that question? Oh, it seems okay. Okay, I think we have a, okay, we will, okay, nobody would like to react or to respond to that. But we have a question here. We will leave that question. Can we leave that question, sir? Then we will
Yes,
address.
go ahead,
Yes.
please.
Okay. Maybe they're still organizing their thoughts. No? So later they will be able to respond to that. So there's a question from JP.
Yeah.
I like Physics Wonder Girls Camp. How much support does your university give?
Our university, over the years that it has been done at our university, most of the support comes from outside. There was only one instance where the university provided a small amount to tide us over. But most of the support came from outside. I applied to foundations and things like that, and they graciously funded the girls' camp. But our university has been very supportive as far as the infrastructure is concerned. For example, the use of equipment, the equipment that was normally used for classes, for laboratories, in the summer when there's a lot less classes or need for these, we are able to use some of them. There is no rent, obviously, for the rooms, for the laboratories. They have been very supportive as far as advertising, marketing, and things like that. But I think for me to pay, say, our undergraduate crew members who spend a lot of time helping and mentoring the participants, I often have to look to support outside. And then, yeah, so the university provides some support and provides a lot of support in terms of infrastructure and information and things like this, and marketing. And her follow-up question is, what is the most challenging in managing the girls in the Wonder Camp? The girls, yeah, the girls are very smart. So there's really not much concern there. You have to tell them what is safe and what is not safe, and that they have to follow the rules. It is, after all, lab space, and they have to be careful. But otherwise, it's a joy to work with them. The challenging part is putting the materials together, putting in binders and thinking of activities. There's a lot of work that goes to the before stage, before the camp stage. And many times I find myself, and my wife actually sometimes, a lot of times, helps me. We end up working there up to midnight, because I have to make sure everything is in order, and my family has been very supportive of these. And I think there's another question here. Um, in our school, we have only few equipment which we can use for hands-on activities. Can we ask for support so that we can boost our learning in science? One does not necessarily need expensive equipment or even a lot of equipment to do some of the experiments. Although if you are able to find sponsors, then that realizable. One can simply use household materials, cheap versions of materials. One has to be kind of thoughtful about these things if there is support. But I think that there are many companies in the Philippines who would be supportive of camps for girls. I would encourage you to reach out to the women executives of companies, because I would venture that they would be itching to support something like this.
Okay, sir.
Yep.
We still have questions here. There's a curious question from Januel Ider. Is there a way that we can develop or foster collaborative learning online among science subjects?
Yes, especially in this era of COVID,
Yes.
where some of the learning has to be online. If you use, I'm more familiar with Zoom. Zoom has the ability to create breakout rooms. So there's a main room, the plenary room, like this, and then you can break it up into smaller groups. And then what you can do is within that smaller group, you can have some kind of activity, or and they report the results of their activity to the main group. So this would, in some ways, be collaborative or interactive, because you force the students to discuss things. And you don't necessarily need to do experiments. It could be a question, or it could be a problem, say a problem in math that is assigned by the teacher in real time, and then these teams of 3 or 4, they can work and they can discuss and figure it out together, and then there would be a person representing the group who would present to the main group. So in essence, that would be a collaborative or interactive activity that is
Okay.
online.
Okay. Another question from Ms. Bianca Fabricante. How many of the participants indeed proceeded to take careers in sciences, most especially physics?
Right. This is a good question. We are in the process of getting data. Why? Because remember, our targets were middle school girls, and it took certainly it will take a couple of years for them to complete middle school and then high school to get to the stage where they're going into college. And that just kind of started for the first batch maybe last year. And so what I did is I reached out to the graduates of N number of years ago, and then asked the parents and try to figure out where the kid wants to go. And some of them have gone or are going to STEM fields, not necessarily physics, but definitely STEM. So that's an ongoing research that we are doing.
Okay. Okay, another question from Alistair. In your camp for girls, are there middle graders that struggled in math but excelled in physics?
That's a good question. other girls who struggled in math, but who did well in physics. Okay, let me say this. Physics is not math, right? You can be good at math and you can be lousy in physics, right? And you can be good in physics, but not necessarily good in math. Well, you need to be a little bit, there is some threshold level that you have to have good math, not necessarily excellent math, in order to pass courses, physics courses that are intensive, a little more intensive than math. I cannot answer in point to particular campers, but I can talk about some physics majors that we've had. Some physics majors that we've had were very, very good in physics and in physical intuition. They may not be the best math students, but they can hold their math okay, but they have good instincts. They have good physics instincts, and that is sometimes very more important in surviving the, the the course of physics.
Okay, I think this will be our last question. How can we promote this, especially in the Philippines, where public schools have limited resources? That's from Jason Guerrero, yes?
That's a very good question, and I commend you for asking that question. That question, which is a question that some people in the room are probably wanting to ask, or did not dare to ask. But that's a good question.
I think so.
You don't need to spend a lot of money to do some of the things we are talking about here. In other words, activities that are collaborative, interactive. You just have to change the way you teach, right? So instead of, say, preaching to a room full of chairs arranged neatly in front of you in rows and columns, and them all looking at you like you are a sage on a stage, you can just break it up. Make small clusters of chairs facing each other so that the students are talking to each other, and let them discuss. You throw a question, they discuss, and then they interact and they collaborate, and then they throw it back to you. That doesn't cost money. It just costs a change of heart on your part as the instructor, and maybe thinking about the right questions or the right problems to ask, so that there is some collaboration that is involved. If you must use equipment, you don't necessarily have to buy things. You can make things. For example, you can ask the students, how will you design a slingshot, like a tirador, right? Using household techniques, household materials. And then they get, or you ask them, how can you build the tallest structure using the following materials? So you throw them straw, you throw them different, a balloon or whatever, and then they solve the problem. That doesn't cost a lot of money. So in reality, you can do all of these things cheaply, and I do encourage you to do this.
Okay.
And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out directly to me by email. I'm happy to happy to respond to you directly if you are do not find yourself asking questions in this forum. I also want to compliment the people in the chat who were sharing their respective experiences in their schools. Your stories are very strong and really worthy of of more discussion, and I really want to thank you for doing that. Um, uh, Examples of minimal resources to use. For example, we talk about that non-Newtonian fluid um, that the people can step on and not sink, despite the fact that it is a fluid. That is only cornstarch and water in the right proportion. So uh, I think cornstarch is very cheap, and water, there's water everywhere, right? So it doesn't even have to be clean water. So these are things that you can create non-Newtonian fluid just to excite the students, and it can be done very cheaply to demonstrate science principles.
Okay. So thank you, sir, for patiently answering or responding to the questions. I think that will be the end of the open forum. And as mentioned by the speaker, you can ask your questions directly if you still have your questions. You can also write your questions, continue writing your questions via Slido, and I can facilitate or email those questions to the speaker. Based on schedule, we're supposed to end at 11:30, but of course, due to our glitches,
Yep. And thank you for your patience.
Yes.
Thank you for the patience of your audience too.
Yes, I think it's understandable that we extend for a few more minutes. Okay, I hope it's okay for everyone. I guess our discussion has been exhaustive, such that we tackled a lot of topics and issues concomitant to the topic or to the webinar topic. With this, I think it is necessary to have a synthesis so that we will arrive at a common understanding of what transpired in this morning's meeting. And to do that, I would like to give the floor to the Dean of the College of Education of MSU-IIT, Dr. Amelia T. Buwan. Ami?
Okay, good morning. Thank you very much, Dr. Ramos. This is our first attempt to organize a webinar, and we are so blessed to have you as expert on promoting STEM for girls. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ma'am Jinky, for introducing to us, Dr. Ramos. Your passion really challenged us this morning. So as you could see on the chat, teachers are encouraged to do the same maybe in their classroom, although in the chat we could say that how could we do that? We have set of standards set by DepEd. How could we do this in my classroom? So as you could see in your screen, can you see it in your screen? The picture?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Actually, that one is, sorry. Can you see the picture? No?
It says loading.
Yeah. Actually, the picture that I want to show is what happened to this morning. I have kids at home, and then I have one girl, my grandson, and my nephew and niece are there. And then what we are doing right now for a quarantine period, some of the kids at home are having a garden. But yesterday, they started to think about making a swimming pool because they missed going out and they want to go for a swim. So this morning, they're starting to use their shovel and then try to plan about a swimming pool. So I'm thinking now, how could I support them in such a way that it's not, how could I support them so that they could really make a swimming pool at home? It's very challenging, and since you cannot see the picture, I would like, I will just describe it to you that there's one girl and there's two boys now who had a project on a swimming pool at home. So it's my task now on how to support them that they could really make a swimming pool. So therefore, as an educator, as mentioned by Dr. Ramos, we must cultivate the learning environment in our school. I like the question when one asked, how could we encourage collaboration online? So we have different environment now, but remember, this is only temporary. We could go back in our classroom where how do we cultivate the learning environment in such a way that our students will be interested in STEM, where they have an opportunity to be creative. And then provide a safe, nurturing environment for girls. In what way that we could promote girls in doing STEM activities. And based on the research presented by Dr. Ramos, it started to decline in middle school. In our case, we call it maybe they're in second year, junior high school. So therefore, as teachers, we must think about that in junior high school, how could we nurture the interest of STEM? Because as what I have observed, in elementary grade, girls really perform better than boys. But what happened in middle school, that we haven't nurtured more on the interest of girls in STEM. How could you maintain the excitement of girls in STEM? So we're challenged with the talk of Dr. Ramos. To do that, the one presented to us by Dr. Ramos, they tried to organize a camp, giving opportunity for our girls to have learning opportunities to go to camp or to visit to industry, and as well as I like that we must show a model. Maybe those expert engineers, scientists who are girls, let's try to research who are those in our community, maybe in Region 10, and then try to invite that in our classroom so that they could see a model. And then all of this, when they already have that interest in STEM, we could maintain that. And the one being emphasized was by Dr. Ramos this morning is about we will serve as a mentor. We must engage in professional development like this webinar on how do we improve ourselves as teachers in such a way that we could give opportunity for girls and promote STEM in our classroom. So I just want to thank everyone for joining this webinar. This is our first attempt for Region 10. And I found out as Dean of the College of Education that we want to organize more webinar like this, where we will maximize the community in such a way that we could learn more on how to promote STEM among girls. So thank you very much for joining us, and more webinar to come. Thank you, Dr. Ramos, for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, June. June?
Okay, once again, thank you for joining us in today's webinar. Dr. Ramos, thank you for sharing your insight and expertise.
Hey, June,
Yes.
before we go, I shared my email address in the chat inbox, in the chat column there, so that if there are any teachers out there who want to reach out directly to me, they can email me at this address. So my email address is posted on the chat.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, thank you also to the members of the technical team, Ms. Ning Borinaga of the MSO ID Center for E-Learning, Frederick Nabato and Elvin Mendoza of the Audiovisual Media Center, Mr. Oswaldo Pabatang, the Assistant Dean of the College of Education. And special thanks to Sir Dante Dinawana, the Director of the Information Communications Technology Center of MSUI 80 for the assistance. But before we conclude, please take a moment to fill out our exit survey or evaluation form that is shown in your screen using the link that's yes, tinyurl.com/STEM4GirlsEval. Take note that only those who can submit their evaluation to us will receive a certificate of participation, and the certificates will be sent via email, so please make sure that the email you have provided in the evaluation form is correct. Once again, thank you for your time, and may you have a wonderful day ahead. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dr. Ramos. Hope.
Thank you, David. Thank you, June. Thank you. Appreciate your help. And thank you to your team. And thank you, Vice Chancellor Morales. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Have a good day.
Stay safe.
Have a good day, everyone. Ma'am Jinky, thank you very much.
Sorry.